Hi, I'm Tricia, and I'll be reading you this week's The Barnstable Patriot, dated Friday, February 28th. And our start-off article today, State, Removing Mill Pond Dam Would Improve Water Quality. Could removal be in the cards for the Mill Pond Dam in Marston's Mills? The state is funding a preliminary design study to help the town determine the answer. The Healy-Driscoll administration recently announced that the dam, near the junction of routes 149 and 28 on the Marston's Mills River, is one of 8 across the state for which officials are weighing the risks and benefits of removal. Barnstable is getting a $50,000 share of a total $400,000 allocation for the purpose from the Department of Fish and Game's Division of Ecological Restoration. Amber Unruh, the Senior Project Manager for Special Projects in the Barnstable Department of Public Works, said the grant will provide the technical support to complete a study that will inform ongoing decision-making about the long-term fate of the dam. The dam is acknowledged to be a municipal asset and an important habitat, including for bridal shriner, a fish listed in the Massachusetts as a species of special concern. Mill Pond is valued for aesthetic views, bird watching, fish passage, rare species habitat, and the removal of 2,500 kilograms of nitrogen from the Marston's Mills River annually, Unruh said. The state lists Mill Pond Dam's condition as fair, but its hazard potential as significant, meaning that while there are no existing safety deficiencies at this time, failure would result in environmental damage, economic loss, and disruption of lifeline. According to the National Inventory of Dams, the dam is made of masonry and concrete. The state agency asserts that removing the dam would improve water quality and restore habitats for migratory and cold water species, and would also enhance flood resilience for nearby infrastructure and homes. Unruh said the town is trying to improve water quality at Mill Pond by dredging about 30,000 cubic yards of accumulated sediment, as well as improve fish passage for river herring that pass through on their way to spawn in Middle Pond. A 2017 study by the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth School of Marine Science and Technology said dredging the pond should lead to removing more nitrogen that accumulates in the Three Bays headwaters. This alternative is identified as a non-traditional solution for nitrogen management in Barnstable's comprehensive wastewater management plan. The town inspects the dam regularly to ensure it complies with standards set by the Massachusetts Dam Safety Office. A 2020 inspection found the overall condition of the dam to be fair, Unruh said, but also revealed that the dam had significant vegetation and that the fish ladder needs significant repairs. All recommended remedial actions of the inspections were for the fish ladder, which included replacement of the fish ladder entrance and repair of the fish ladder steps and pools, Unruh said. In order to address the fish ladder deficiencies, the town partnered with the United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources, Conservation Service to improve fish passage into Mill Pond. Experts say the existing fish ladder should be replaced by a larger one to meet modern fish standards. They also found that the fast-flowing water within the culvert under Route 149 and Route 28 creates a velocity barrier for small and medium-sized river herring. To date, a number of alternatives to improve fish passage within the culverts have been studied, but removing the dam has not been examined, Unruh said. Additional study is needed to determine what effect the removal would have on the fish run, nearby infrastructure, and water quality and habitat of Mill Pond and Price Cove, Unruh said. Officials want to take into account how neighbors and the public feel about it, she said. Mill Pond was created in the early 18th century when villagers dammed the Marston's Mills River to run a grist mill, which operated from 1709 through 1920. The pond has since been kept in place for recreation and for its aesthetic attributes and pond habitat. On its website, the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition says the pond is filthy and its waters are impaired. Over time, the group says, the dam has trapped and contained thick black sediments in a geologic kitchen sink that is filled to overflowing with nitrogen and phosphorus. These contaminants flow downriver, the organization states, heavily contributing to excess nitrogen into the Three Bays estuary, which the Association to Preserve Cape Cod has tagged among the most severely impaired embayments on the Cape. In recent years, coalition volunteers have seen a drop in the annual herring count conducted near the culvert on the south end of the pond. The organization says that herring are like canaries in a coal mine. Their presence, or lack thereof, could keenly indicate trouble within the watershed. So what's next? Unruh said the state has already pre-selected vendors to work on the dam removal study. Work will include a site visit, a topographic and bathymetric survey, sediment quality testing, assessment of sediment quantity in the impoundment, hydrologic and hydraulic modeling, preliminary design development, identification of the benefits and impacts, and an estimated cost for future design, permitting, and removal. The study is expected to be complete by June 30th. As the project progresses, town staff will provide comprehensive updates to the town council and the public, Unruh said. And we move on to The Unlikely Journey of a Boy's Poem on Hockey. In a corner of the Barnstable transfer station, amid the chaos of things tossed aside, one man's curiosity has unearthed a touching story about a boy, his joy in hockey, and his perseverance over disabilities, one spanning hundreds of miles and decades of time, with no small amount of serendipity thrown into the narrative. It all started last summer when Brad Johnson and his son Nick of Comaquid were disposing of bulky items at the station at 45 Flint Street in Marston's Mills. There, nestled inside the remains of what appeared to be a vintage school desk, was something that caught his attention. An age-brittle index card with handwriting on it. I was there visiting, and we were doing a dump run, said Johnson, who lives in the Berkshires but frequently stays with his Cape Cod family. I saw this nice old wooden desk. It was all broken apart, and just stuck in a corner was this handwritten note. It was all yellow. You could tell it was old. Curious, he retrieved the note. What he found was a heartfelt poem covering both sides of the index card. And to his surprise, it was written by an 11-year-old boy, complete with a name, Donnie Shabbat, and where the boy lived, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, a city in the U.S.-Canada border at the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It was a great poem, and I said, "Geez, a kid that young wrote that," Johnson said. Entitled A Child's Plea, the poem is about a boy's wish to enjoy the game of hockey without being heckled for missed goals and lost games. After his find, Johnson put the poem into the glove compartment of his son's truck, where it remained until he pulled it out again last fall. Intrigued by Donnie Shabbat's words, Johnson couldn't help but wonder about the story behind them. When a Google search failed to turn anything up, he sought assistance from the newspaper in Donnie's hometown, the Sault Star. Before long, he heard from a reporter there, Elaine Della Mattia, who'd found out that Donnie's poem had not only been printed in the newspaper in the late 70s, but was also picked up in January 1979 by The Hockey News, a leading ice hockey publication based in Toronto. Lending poignancy to the story was the revelation that Donnie lived with cerebral palsy and spina bifida, conditions that made walking difficult, let alone playing the game he adored. At 11, this kid had become sort of this minor celebrity with his poem, Johnson said. Through the newspaper, which published a story about the Barnstable find on January 28th, Johnson was put in touch with Donnie's brother, Rob Shabbat, a veteran police sergeant. And this is where serendipity comes into the story. Johnson learned that Donnie had passed away on July 14th at the age of 57. Almost exactly when I found the poem, he said. The timing felt uncanny for both men. When he passed, I was looking for that poem and I couldn't find it, said Rob Shabbat. For years, a framed copy of the poem was on display in the family's rec room with Donnie's hockey trophies, but it had disappeared, perhaps during a move. I just especially wanted to have it after my brother passed last year, Rob Shabbat said. The family's connection to the world of hockey ran deep. Their grandfather, Lorne Shabbat, played in the 1920s and 30s for the Toronto Maple Leafs and the New York Rangers, becoming part of the legacy of the first ever NHL Stanley Cup winning team. Shabbat, 4 years his brother's junior, remembers when Donnie wrote the poem in 1978 and the family's pride when it was published on the Sault Star's Kid Space page that November, and then in the January 5th, 1979 edition of The Hockey News. He recalls thinking his brother was famous. Donnie wrote the poem for an oral assignment while he was a student at the former Alex Muir School in Sault Ste. Marie. He didn't play hockey for very long after that, as with his disabilities, it was very hard for him to walk, Shabbat said. At the end of that school year, his brother forgot the index card with the poem in his desk. But how did a school desk from Ontario end up in the trash 45 years later and more than 1,000 miles away on Cape Cod? Shabbat theorizes that the old desks from the Alex Muir School were sold when the building was closed in 2014, and one of them somehow made its way to Cape Cod. Johnson mailed the index card with Donnie's poem to his brother earlier this month. "I'm going to frame it and put it on the wall," Shabbat said. "To me, it's a family heirloom." For both men, Donnie's poem serves as a reminder that sometimes the smallest moments can become the thread that ties people to something much larger, a mystery, a legacy, and a bond between two strangers brought together by fate through the memory of a boy who loved hockey. And some news about Mass Maritime. Hands-on learning in real time aboard the Patriot state. High-voltage electric training instructor Carlos Montanez is surrounded by students in a small circuit room down on Deck 3 of the Patriot State training vessel. The vessel, with more than 600 staff members and cadets from the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, is returning to the Buzzards Bay campus from the annual winter sea term. In the circuit room, the breaker box is open, a maze of wires, as cadets are using electric meters to test different breakers. Montanez quizzes them about the meter readings. The lesson for this class of seniors, learning how to locate an electric leak on the ship. The day before, it was taking apart floor to ceiling high switch gearboxes as he guided them through step by step. Up on the fourth deck is the training bridge. It is an almost exact functioning replica of operating bridges on the decks above. On the horizon are two ships, one heading south on our starboard side, the other going from east to west, also on starboard side. One floor up, the crew is adjusting course for the situation. Back on the training bridge, marker in hand, instructor Gallup Lappin is drawing out the scenario on the windows, quizzing the students about how they would adjust course for the situation. This is real-time training. Every half hour, sophomore Jack Seidel from New Orleans heads to a large paper navigational chart with the ship's latitude and longitude. From GPS, he charts the position on the chart, comparing it to the ship's projected course, coming up about 100 miles off the coast of Georgia. On clear days, when the weather cooperates, cadets learn the time-tested skills of using a gyro-repeated compass to take a fix of the sun's position to navigate. Just after dusk, they arrive out on the top deck with sextants used to navigate by taking the positions of certain stars. Think of about $330 million new Patriot State training ship as a university with a propeller. The 525-foot-long vessel is a floating classroom. The cadets on board have access to a state-of-the-art learning for the marine transportation student and the marine engineering students. As the vessel heads home, finishing up its first sea term, the cadets will take their final exams on Friday, February 21st, after 6 weeks of real-world training. The ship is expected back in Buzzards Bay, February 22-23. The university's sea term port calls included San Juan, Puerto Rico, Charleston, South Carolina, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, and Tampa, Florida. And our final article on the front page of the Barnstable Patriot: Hyannis may be unable to stop four-story building on Main Street. A proposal to demolish a 110-year-old cornerstone building at Main and Ocean Streets in Hyannis to build a more modern four-story structure brought anger, frustration, and even tears from local residents during a meeting February 19th. This isn't going to look like historic Hyannis. This will be all new, Mike Dowd of Hyannisport said. I'm not sure what the commission is looking at historically. Residents packed the Hyannis Main Street Historic Waterfront District Commission meeting Wednesday night in a small conference room at Barnstable Town Hall, where plans for the building were heard. I'm very disappointed with what's going on, Dowd's wife, Florence, a fourth-generation Cape Codder and designer, said. Main Street is not what it was in the 70s and 80s. We have an opportunity to make it beautiful like back in the day. She then started crying. The plans submitted to the commission call for a new 4-story building of a white plank siding above brick on the first floor with several gables and a cupola. The 3,860 square foot space on the first floor is planned for a restaurant plus an indoor parking garage at the back. The 22 dwelling units would be on 3 floors. The applicant is Bornbaum Associates, managed by Marcello Malegni, who has owned the building since buying it in foreclosure in 2008 for $1 million after financing the previous plan under the company name LBM Financial. Malegni said earlier this week that the current proposal is the same as the previous developers. He was at the meeting but was not introduced by the chairman and did not speak to the commission. The proposal presented a dilemma for the commission. Zoning guidelines allow 4-story buildings. Several commissioners said they were torn between the history and sentiment of the building that has housed a grocery store, an art gallery, a small performing arts venue, and a museum, and the urgent need for housing. It's such a conflict for the commission, member Jack Kay, an architect, said, noting the town's efforts for more housing and not having grants to restore historical storefronts. He suggested using the existing brick, which he said may be from the West Barnstable Brick Factory. Several commissioners and residents said the building should be red brick and the windows trimmed in white, not black like in the plans. Attorney Patrick Nickerson presented renderings of the plans on slides and passed around samples of brown and gray brick for the new building's first floor. Kay and others cited the significance of the building location, calling it the Times Square of Hyannis. Resident Rick Bishop also cited the dramatic impact of losing the corner building. You've given up on a very important part of the street, he told the commissioners. Barnstable Town Councilor Betty Lutke, who attended the meeting along with councilors Chris Clark and Charles Bloom, recounted her visceral connection to this building, where her grandmother shopped when it was a first national grocery store. She called the site a blight by neglect. You're the only line of defense, she told the commission. You need to see this in context. Commissioner Kay also pointed out that the height dimensions shown on the plan were based on sea level. It would be helpful to have the actual dimensions, he told Nickerson and the other presenter, attorney John Kenny from Centerville. Nickerson said they did not have the height dimensions, which prompted resident and architect Marianne Agresti to come to the meeting after watching it from home. She called presenters' admission a red flag. Nickerson said the plans were shown Wednesday and were drawn in 2022, but he said they will provide updated renderings. Commission Vice Chair Tom Doherty strongly objected to the size of the proposal. "This building is going to be massive," he said. "Nobody wants this building cleaned up more than me," he said, but he would like to see some height variations on the floors to make it look less massive. The new 8,254 square foot building would reach almost to the street, with setbacks from 2.2 feet to 8.6 feet. A new sidewalk is proposed for the Ocean Street side. The building is planned to cover both the existing building space at 337 Main Street and the adjacent vacant lot at 345 Main Street, Nickerson said. Commissioner Kevin Matthews said he hates the 4 stories, but the area is zoned for that. "The terrible building has got to come down," he said. The other commission members agreed to the demolition. Nickerson said the Hyannis Fire Department in 2015 had recommended demolishing the building. "It's one of the best I've seen," alternate Commissioner Perry Wentworth said in the most positive comment about the plan. "Bringing commercial and residential property to Main Street is what we need." Elizabeth Werfbang, director of the Hyannis Main Street Improvement District, said the organization fought very hard to work with previous owners to improve the building and offered to work with the current developers. "The demolition is a no-brainer," Commission Chair Cheryl Powell said, but that she would like to retain something historic, such as the octagonal window on the front of the old building and the brick. Powell had a long list of questions for the presenters concerning absence of lighting, landscaping, elevations in the plan, as well as trash removal, the parking garage, and the siding and trim colors. "Our purview is historic character," Powell said, but noted it needs to merge with the guidelines. "We don't have powers of enforcement." 6 commissioners and 1 alternate said they could not support the plan as presented. Wentworth, who supported the plan, did not have a vote as alternate. The commission voted to continue the proposal to its March 19th meeting. Kenny agreed it should be continued. And moving into page 2 of the Barnstable Patriot, Vineyard Offshore eliminates 50 jobs. Vineyard Offshore, which is behind the 1,200 megawatt Vineyard Wind 2 project proposed south of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, has eliminated 50 jobs, citing recent market uncertainty. However, none of the reductions, including both layoffs and elimination of some positions across the company, affect the Vineyard Wind project, according to a company representative. The Vineyard Wind project, including its staff and contractors, remains unaffected by Vineyard Offshore's changes. Its shareholders are fully committed to ensuring the project's successful completion, said a company representative by email on Wednesday. Vineyard Offshore is an affiliate of Denmark-based Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, which is a partner with Avangrid on the 800 megawatt Vineyard Wind 1 project, now under construction south of the islands. Besides Vineyard Wind 2, the company is working on the 1,350 megawatt Excelsior Wind project off Long Island in the New York Bight area, and a project off the coast of Humboldt County in Northern California. Vineyard Offshore believes that offshore wind is a vital part of the nation's future energy independence, the representative said. The company emphasizes its long-term goal of producing more than 6 gigawatts of power from its offshore projects, while creating thousands of jobs and fueling economic growth. But at this time, the representative said, in an effort to position our projects for sustainable long-term success, we have made the difficult decision to reduce our current team size in light of the recent market uncertainties, and we look forward to continuing to advance these transformative American energy projects in the years ahead. The reductions come in the wake of President Donald Trump's executive order issued January 20th to stop new offshore projects. The order suspends sale of new offshore wind leases and permitting for new projects, pending an environmental and economic review. Previously permitted projects like Vineyard Wind 1 are not affected. Vineyard Wind 2, however, is on hold for now after the company withdrew from contract negotiations with Massachusetts in December. 800 megawatts of the project were selected by the state in the last wind power procurement round, but that selection was contingent upon Connecticut buying a remaining 400 megawatts. When Connecticut passed on the purchase in December, the company withdrew the project. A Vineyard offshore representative indicated at that time that the company will advance the project in a future solicitation. And we move on to lawmakers hammering out differences on shelter bill. The cost of the state's emergency assistance shelter system and who should be eligible to receive state-supported housing is a central area of disagreement between two members of the Cape and Islands legislative delegation. Representative Steve Zaros, Republican Barnstable, believes the priority should go to Massachusetts residents and then only to immigrants in the country legally and who are not facing detainers issued by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Senator Julian Cyr, Democrat from Truro, counters the Cape's housing shortage and the influx of immigrants with legal status, which requires a more generous approach to providing for the homeless families and pregnant women as envisioned by the state's right to shelter law. A House-Senate conference committee is working out differences between separate versions of legislation that would appropriate $425 million to fund the EA shelter system through the end of June, while also tightening eligibility requirements and putting into place capacity limits. Currently, Cape Cod has 5 EA shelters, 2 in Hyannis, 1 in Falmouth, 1 in Bourne, and 1 in Mashpee. No hotels or motels are being used for shelters on the Cape, unlike other parts of the state. Cyr, who voted for the Senate's supplemental budget proposal, attributed the steady increase in the number of unhoused families in Massachusetts to 2 factors. Massachusetts is about 220,000 housing units short, he said. The second is influx in new arrivals, largely people with legal status to be in the U.S., the majority of whom are Haitians with temporary protective status as a result of political instability in their homeland. Massachusetts has the 3rd largest Haitian population in the country after Miami and New York City. Cape Cod has become more and more unaffordable. We're increasingly reliant on the immigrant workforce, he said. While acknowledging the financial strain, Sear said this is the program that has always been funded from the budget, but the costs are significantly higher than they typically are. We haven't cut any programs across the state government to continue to fund the EA program. But what we're trying to do is to work toward a sustainable EA shelter program that operates within our fiscal constraints and is everything we can to keep families with small children from sleeping on the streets. Xaros, who opposed the House-passed plan, instead backed Republican amendments to reduce funding to $200 million, require universal background checks for shelter applicants, and allow state and local officials to honor ICE civil detainer requests. A civil detainer is a formal request to local law enforcement to hold an individual for up to 48 hours after their scheduled release. These requests target undocumented individuals, visa overstays, legal immigrants with certain criminal convictions, and those flagged in ICE's database. Even though only legal migrants and eligible families can access Massachusetts' emergency shelter program, Xaros said the amendments were aimed at anyone with past immigration violations or arrests for any reason. As a former deputy police chief, I can attest to how important it is for the state and local law enforcement to cooperate with federal counterparts in the name of public safety. Recently, we have seen cases where migrants accused of serious crimes, including forcibly rape of children, have been released from custody notwithstanding valid ICE detainer requests. This is incredibly dangerous, offensive to Massachusetts residents, and completely unacceptable. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ruled in 2017 that local and state law enforcement cannot hold a person to comply with ICE requests. That ruling was applauded by immigration advocates who argued against efforts to change the law, declaring not only would it undermine public safety by causing residents to fear their local police, it would invite costly and unnecessary litigation about its constitutionality. ACLU Legal Director Matt Siegel highlighted the impact of ICE detainer policies on legal representation. Beyond the immense human impact, enforcing ICE detainers has a substantial effect on client representation by blocking attorneys from meeting constitutional and ethical obligations to defend their clients. And more political news. Teacher from Barnstable values X on passport. There is troubling news for non-binary Americans, especially those who live abroad, like Gwyneth Ox, who grew up in Barnstable and now lives and teaches in Hiroshima, Japan. President Donald Trump's recent round of executive orders includes one that rejects all gender-identifying references on government documents such as visas, passports, and global entry cards. The U.S. State Department has suspended processing passport applications with a gender marker different from the applicant's biological sex. The orders also require all federal departments to recognize gender as a male-female binary, replacing all instances of gender with sex in materials, and cease all funding for gender-affirming care. It's a wake-up call. Living abroad, Ox, age 37, said in a phone call on February 8th. They have been working abroad for more than 10 years. Ox identifies as agender, someone having no gender identity or a lack of gender. I have had an American passport my whole life, Ox said. I know the value of an American passport. It has been the gold standard around the world. Americans need to realize that some have passports that are useless, devalued. Is that going to change how other countries view an American passport? Ox passport has the designation of X, which means they do not biologically fit the definition of male or female. The last administration very quietly allowed for it to happen, Ox said. The regulation was changed by the Biden administration in 2022. At the State Department website on February 17th, it says a passport with an X marker will remain valid until its expiration date. Ox said their passport and other documents, including a work visa and a residence card, need to be renewed quickly last year when they changed jobs. The large international school in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, where they had been teaching, went bankrupt and closed. Ox then had to get the documents together in April for the new teaching position that began in August in Japan. I watched a video of the first person to get the X designation on a passport, Ox said. The person won the court case. I was not allowed to lie in getting my documents, Ox said. I did all the documents with a non-binary passport. There also were no issues when registering as an international resident in Hiroshima. I was told I was the first non-binary in Hiroshima to register, Ox said. The Japanese culture will respect whatever the Americans are doing. When I register with my local ward, they want to make sure it's correct. Although Ox has not heard from other non-binary Americans living abroad, they said, I feel safer than Americans at home. But Ox admitted to having a lot of anxiety about going anywhere with a passport that may not be accepted. If I stay here, everything is fine. But if I travel abroad, it depends on the country. If I re-enter the U.S., would they try to confiscate my passport, Ox said. It feels like I've been barred from returning to the United States. I don't want to test it. Ox has not been back to the Cape where their mother lives since Christmas of 2023. They are most concerned about needing to return in case of a family emergency. Ox attended elementary schools in Barnstable and graduated in 2006 from Sturgis Charter Public School in Hyannis, and then went on to earn a bachelor's degree at Principia College in Illinois and a master's degree and teaching license at Northeastern University in 2011. They taught 1 year at the Sturgis in inclusion support, where other teachers encouraged applying to teach overseas. Ox taught in Hungary and South Korea before taking the assignments in Vietnam and Japan. They came back to the U.S. for a year during the pandemic. As a design teacher, Ox has been working with students in grades 5 to 10 who are learning project management in areas such as film and video editing, coding, architecture, sustainability, and 3D modeling. They taught robotics in South Korea. I learned a lot on the job, Ox said, but they were not expecting to be teaching in those fields, but loves the work. Students call them MX Ox, pronounced mix. The term has been used for non-binary people for about 5 years, Ox said. Ox's presence in the Japanese school encouraged another non-binary person to apply for a job and will be teaching there next fall, Ox noted. On the passport issue, Ox said the advice they were given was to go to the U.S. Embassy and change it to what it was before. But the State Department has stopped all requests for changes of gender. But Ox believes that changing the passport designation would be ammunition for an anti-trans administration, and they would be lying to do so. The main issue is that when the administration took over, the designation was non-binary, Ox said. It's not clear if the new policy applies only to new passport applicants. As for folks who already have the ID, Ox said in a follow-up email, it may be safe for now, but at what point does this change? I suspect it would be all right, but I'm far too anxious to test it, and risk losing my passport is not worth it when it has my work visa, they said. For now, I will wait and see what other people do. But Ox is adamant about defending their status against the current government. The value of this document is that it clearly says who I am. I don't plan on giving it up. And some news from the Steamship Authority. New steamship ferry underway between Hyannis and Nantucket. The Steamship Authority's newest ferry, MV Barnstable, had some bugs to work out on its first daily runs between Hyannis and Nantucket in January, but most had been resolved, according to reports at the Steamship Authority Board meeting on Tuesday. The vessel was commissioned in December. The MV Barnstable is one of 3 sister ships purchased by the authority in 2022 from Hornbeck Offshore Services of Covington, Louisiana. Along with the MV Aquina and MV Monomoy, it was converted for use by the Steamship Authority at Alabama Shipyard in Mobile, Alabama. The purchase and conversion costs were made possible in part via an agreement with the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority that yielded $28.1 million in federal funding. MV Barnstable had some initial issues with speed and draft, especially in the early morning runs with the heaviest loads, carrying tankers and other trucks, Nathaniel Lowell, chairman of the Port Council, told the board. The new ferry also posed some problems for the loading crews, he said. The issue was also discussed earlier this month at the Port Council meeting. The speed situation worked itself out, Lowell said. Overall, the people on the ground and ship are getting used to loading. He said it's good to get the bugs out in the winter before the busier summer runs. Steamship Authority General Manager Robert Davis provided more details about the MV Barnstable's early problems. They included a thermostat valve that was fixed and adding a block heater that was needed because of the colder temperatures on Cape Cod. A few trips of the vessel were lost, Davis said, but it was operating again by January 28th and has continued to run and meet its schedules. He said the loading issue is partly due to training crews, but operating procedures for the crews are getting updated. When there is a new vessel, there are always issues, Davis said. We're in the middle of a learning curve. He agreed with Lowell that the slower winter season is allowing extra time to resolve any issues. Our goal is to transport 8 tankers and a couple of smaller trucks on the new boat, Davis said. The vessel currently can hold 7 tankers. Mark Amundsen, Director of Engineering and Maintenance, provided updates and showed photos of the ongoing work on the 2 other vessels in Alabama. He said the MV Aquina has finished testing and other improvements are being completed before it departs for the Cape in March. The MV Monomoy will have a stability test in June and sea trials further out, Ammon said. Davis gave a brief update on the new Woods Hole terminal, where wall formwork along with the south side of the building was being erected and a roof membrane was installed. He said the construction is about 35% complete. And now a little arts and entertainment. Boston pops to perform Jaws concert in sync with screening. The classic film Jaws turns 50 this year, and the Boston Pops will mark the occasion by hosting a showing of the movie accompanied by a live orchestra playing the soundtrack. Now, for the first time, audiences will have the chance to experience the power of a live symphony orchestra performing the entire score in sync with one of the greatest motion pictures of all time, the website said. Renowned conductor John Williams wrote all the music for the classic movie, which was directed by Steven Spielberg. What makes the music even more close to home is the fact that the bulk of the movie was filmed on Martha's Vineyard. Here's what to know about the Boston Pops event. The performances of Jaws will happen on Friday, May 9th, and Saturday, May 10th. Both shows will be held at 7:30. The performances will take place at Symphony Hall in Boston. The ticket prices range from $50 to $122. And a few obituaries. Our first is Jane Kelly Dickinson King. With heavy hearts, the family of beloved Jane Kelly Dickinson King of Marston's Mills is saddened to announce her passing on February 14, 2025, after a ruptured brain aneurysm. Her favorite songs played as she passed peacefully, surrounded by family. And our second obituary listed would be Donald Norman Woodruff, who passed away on January 2nd, 2025, at his home in Barnstable, Mass. He was 81 years old. Donations in Don's memory may be made to the Cape Cod National Seashore at 99 Marconi Site Road, Wellfleet, Mass. And finally, Love, Life, and Everything Else, 4 books from Cape Cod authors. Want to read something written by a Cape Cod author? Here are 4 books to get you started. First, Passion and Provocation by Judith Partillo. Passion and Provocation explores all the different layers and phases of life, from early memories from her youth to later years. Themes of love, life, friendship, and personal growth appear throughout. Partillo's selection of poems is divided into 9 categories, starting at the beginning and ending with tributes dedicated to loved ones, past lives, and womanhood, to name a few. Although its original release day was Valentine's Day 2024, Partillo's words and the themes she explores are timeless. And second, Here and Now, There and Then by John Lawrence Doretta. In this collection of poems, Doretta explores our existence in a spiritual journey through nature, life, death, and afterlife. The book's vivid descriptions of the world among us and the beauty within is a reminder to appreciate all life has to offer. The book is short but fulfilling to read, with only 55 pages. And third, Shelter of the Monument, a Provincetown love story by Yvonne de Souza. Writing about the hard realities of falling in love young and all the ways it can change you, Yvonne de Souza shares an honest and emotional recollection of events from her life. As de Souza shows through her relationship to Richard, who was 11 years older than her. Following your heart does not always turn out the way you might think. This coming-of-age memoir, set in Provincetown, takes readers throughout a journey of love, family, friendship, addiction, and heartbreak. And next would be Living While Dying, My Cancer Journey by Tom Barrett. Tom Barrett shares his difficult journey battling stage 4 prostate cancer. Barrett's memoir takes readers through, and I'm so sorry, takes readers through the ups and downs of 8 years of treatment, remission, and cancer's return. Throughout all of this, Barrett continues living his life, making sure to enjoy every moment to the fullest. Living While Dying is a reminder of how quickly life can change and the importance of appreciating every moment, whether it be through travel or exploring the little things in your life that may otherwise go unnoticed. The memoir is a combination of years of journal entries written by Barrett through his journey with cancer. And we'll end with some tidbits. Cape's Best Mac and Cheese. The rooftop at Pelham House Resort in Dennisport made the list last week as one of USA Today's best restaurants in the nation. Here on the Cape, we're blessed with so many good restaurants that we added a list of 10 that we wish had made. Locally, Cape Cod Times readers voted Embargo in Hyannis as having the best mac and cheese on Cape Cod. David Noble, who owns the Tapas restaurant with his wife Marissa, said the secret of Embargo's most ordered takeout dish is in the bechamel sauce. This week, there's news from Provincetown, where the former Bradford Street home of Provincetown Brewing Company is on the market. The 93-seat brewery restaurant at 141 Bradford Street is listed at $2.1 million. It's right in the heart of downtown Provincetown. You can see how close it is to the ferry and everything, said listing agent Joel Harms of William Ravi's Real Estate. It was a health food market before. Because it's in that TCC, Town Commercial Center, it can be a lot of different things. The Bradford Street property is owned by P&J LLC, whose principals, Paolo Martini and Jonathan Hawkins, also own the historic Crown and Anchor entertainment complex where Provincetown Brewing is relocating. Provincetown Brewing Company announced on December 18th that it was relocating to the Crown, opening by Memorial Day, and transforming the venue's restaurant and courtyard while recreating its beloved gathering space. And that's all I have time for today. This is your reader, Tricia, saying thanks for listening.